Hello, YouTubers. Hope you're having a great day, morning, evening, wherever you're at. Um, Wanted to try and do a video here for the anatomy of waves. Um, this is T, an artist, as you may have guessed if you're at my channel. I'm doing this in ArtRage 5, and the reason I'm doing an anatomy of waves lesson is because I have a lot of people that ask me about how to do ocean scenes or how to paint this or that. And I love painting waves and seascapes and the like, so I thought, you know what, I'm going to go through and break this down. So this may end up being a little bit longer video, and it'll be kind of a walkthrough with it. So just bear with me as I try and go through and show you the breakdown of all of it. I thought, starting with the anatomy of waves would be a good way to do it because you kind of need to understand the bones of what's going on when you're doing anything in art, be it with seascapes, landscapes, anatomy of people, or whatever. So just a little quick thing of scribbling right here while I'm talking. But anyway, let me kind of show you what I'm talking about. So let's get started. So like I said, lesson 1, anatomy of waves. So when you think about a wave out on the ocean, think about it from the side here. So let me draw this out real quick. So let's say you have a couple of waves and draw it out. What I'm using right now is the pen tool here in ArtRage. And so I just draw a little peak here and a little valley and a peak here. And I'll go through and label this here in just a second. So now what causes these peaks and valleys when you're doing this? And it's kind of important to know. So because you have to think about this as you're going through and painting it because it's going to affect the way everything looks in your painting. So if you could look at a wave in a cross section and see what the water is doing, you would see that the water is actually rotating on itself in this way, and it's got a center of axis, which is the line I've drawn there on the diagonal, and then another axis right here with the way the wave is rotating in a clockwise manner, assuming it's traveling from left to right here on the screen. And it's rotating this way, like so. And like I said, the let's see here. So what these are going to be called now. You'll hear me refer to this. Let me label this real quick. So this would be the peak, or sometimes referred to as a swell. Okay. And you usually have in waves, you're going to have one following another as they rotate through it. You've probably taken a rope before and kind of shaken it, and you'll see how one follows after another. So you have a peak and a swell, and then down in the middle here, this is called the trough. So let me get this spelled out here real quick. And again, seeing how the direction's going. So like I said, now the swirl, here, well, I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself. So when you think about the waves and the direction of movement, they're rolling one on top of the other, literally just kind of orbiting towards each other. So if the direction of movement was from left to right here on the screen, then one would be rolling towards the other, and the orbiting direction of movement would be clockwise, and they would be rolling towards the shoreline. Okay. Now, if you think about this on going along the ocean line, this would actually be a big cylinder that rolls down the length of the beach, and that's why you get those long wave tubes that start out. So you have the orbiting energy here, and in front of it you have another set of orbiting energy that feeds the next one, and then as that hits, it's going to pull back and then cause the next one to do it. So something to think about. Like I said, you have one kind of coming up, the other one going down, and the next one coming up and going down. So kind of something to think about as it's happening. And if you can keep that in your head, if any of this is remotely making sense, one comes up, goes down, and then one comes up, goes down. So if you can think about that when you're painting it, it kind of helps you see and understand that the water is really kind of flowing over these humps. And as it kind of happens, it's kind of moving underneath it, and the stuff's flowing over top of it for the reflections and anything that has to be floating on top of the water. So here, let me clear all this off real quick, and then I'll show you what I mean kind of in a quick painting. Get a little water here. So how does this break down for a painting? So let me show you here. Let me grab some paint here. Um, I'm just going to use, and by the way, I'm just going to use default settings here in ArtRage 5. The stuff I'm going to use is going to be the oil brush with everlasting settings. You notice I don't have any of my tools really showing because I don't want people to get hung up on what tool is what. So I'm just really using the default settings for ArtRage. But I'm using the oil brush with just everlasting oil, so I don't have to worry about it really running out or anything. Grabbing just a blue here. Let me just kind of start putting in some blues, and remembering that the direction of the wave as it's going, I'm going to think about that while I'm painting it in and kind of getting an idea of the way the flow is going. So here, just bear with me while I put some of these colors in here real quick. So, but this is one of those things you got to think about. Not only if you're painting it from the side, but also when you're looking at it from the front, because even everybody always thinks about the eye of the wave and those big flashy part of the crest and everything else from a breaker and all that. But these parts, these swells, are what you see in the background, or if you've got a ship or something out on the sea. So you got to understand the anatomy of this to kind of make the other things look correct. It's kind of like if you are drawing somebody, you don't understand the anatomy of their arms and legs and everything's out of proportion, and it just doesn't look right. So I'm going to throw in some shadow here because I want to do my light source coming from the right side. So just throwing a little bit darker color here on the left and kind of get a little variety. And just again, just using the oil brush with the everlasting oil. So I kind of like the way it flows. It really feels, comparable to if I was using a real oil brush. And one tip for you, when you're playing around with ArtRage, or with any program really, don't get hung up in all the different settings and everything else. I mean, I know there's plenty of people out there that are selling custom brushes and everything else, which is great. I mean, they are time savers. I've made plenty of custom brushes for myself. I don't think I've ever really bought any, but you can play around with them and make them. You can buy some if you want to. I don't have any for sale. Maybe I should make some, but play around with the basics first. Get those down, and then go play around with the time savers and everything else. But the main thing to remember is when you're doing any kind of artwork, think the rough parts first, and then from there go in and build the details. Right here, I'm just trying to rough in some quick colors. I'm not trying to go for a finished painting. I just want you to kind of get an idea and see some of the movement in almost an impressionistic type of look. So let me just kind of keep brushing some in here and get you kind of a feel for it. So I've got some of the darks. By the way, if you hear some random groans and stuff, my dog is sitting in the background here just kind of stretching, and she's an old fat dog, and she just kind of lays there and groans. Yes, I'm talking about you. And so you'll hear her groan and everything now. And I don't know if this mic will pick it up. It picks up weird things. So laying in a few little highlights. Now here, this is one thing to consider when you're doing these. The highlights that are going to get picked up are going to primarily be down in the trough. The area that I'm painting right now is going on the downside of the wave, and then down here in the trough it'll tend to pick up more light because just like a lake would if it was flat, it reflects more of the sunlight. So that's where it's going to tend to pick up a little bit here, and then maybe a little bit of reflected light on the one in front of it, which is kind of what I'm doing right here. So let me put a little bit on that. And then fold a little bit over to the side here and paint a little bit down through there. And you'll see I'm using these short, choppy strokes. Part of the reason for that, honestly, is because when you're using the everlasting oil in ArtRage, you kind of have to be careful if you're using a stylus, because it can blow out the color pretty quickly if you're not careful, if you put too much pressure. And so I'm just trying to, again, just throwing this in here real quick just to kind of give you guys an idea of the direction and the movement and the idea of what it looks like, and not spend a whole lot of time on this, but I want you to understand how to apply and understand the anatomy of the wave so you can start thinking about the composition of it and playing around with it. So this is just, again, the real rough, almost not quite underpainting, but just maybe one step past underpainting. But you can see by just kind of going back and forth, it starts to kind of get the look of the flow of the water going over the swell and then back down in the trough and then back up into the swell. And I could sit here and just keep playing with this, honestly. I just lose myself in it because to me it's just so relaxing. But hopefully you're still with me and you kind of see what I'm talking about here with it. So I'm not going to work much longer on this. I just kind of want you to see a little what I'm talking about with the highlights and so forth. So anyway, let me kind of tighten this up a little bit. There we go. It's kind of looking a little bit better, I think. But it gives you kind of the general idea. Like I said, you can go back in and it is. But one of the things I was going to say is when you're sitting here painting, one of the dangers, and I still find myself doing this even after all these years of painting, especially if I take a break from painting and try to come back to it, I want to jump right to the finished detail. I don't tend to have the patience to lay down the groundwork. So be patient with yourself. Let yourself play around and let yourself really just lay in the foundations. About 80% of your, well, actually, you're probably going to spend about 20% of your time laying in a quick foundation. Okay, but 80% of the drawing or the painting is going to be based on that foundation. And then you're going to spend 80% of your time refining the details. And the details are going to be what's going to pull it all together. So you spend a lot more time doing the detail, but if you don't have the foundation right, it can really throw everything off. So I hope that makes sense. So basically focus on the foundation, get that part right. So I wanted to go over the anatomy and stuff first and kind of show how to apply it for all these. So you can kind of see the science behind it a little bit and kind of all that. So again, I'm just throwing in some highlights here. I probably should stop here in a minute, but I'm just having fun. so bear with me. If you got a question or anything in comments, leave them below while we're doing this. You can leave a little question or anything below. I'll be happy to try and answer it. I try my best to get back in here and answer these as fast as I can. But I do tend to work a lot, and so I'm busy, but I'll do my absolute best to get in here and answer as best I can. So here you can see kind of pulling together as a rough wave and some ocean scene kind of thing. So hopefully you get the kind of idea. So let me get ready to kind of move on to the next scene. This is also where you could play around with a few highlights and maybe even some foam and stuff if you wanted to, just catching some of the glint of the light here and there, kind of like this. Which it's always kind of a game of push and pull, push and pull. But yeah, like I was saying, leave some comments, leave questions. If this is clear, then I'll do another lesson. Go to the next step, maybe doing some atmosphere type stuff, and rocks and all that. Because that way, kind of going over every little aspect of it, so that way you can kind of be able from there to be able to put a full scene together on your own, whether from your head or from a picture. So anyway, hopefully this is giving you kind of the idea of what I'm talking about. And you can kind of see the anatomy here, the way it's flowing from the swells and the trough and everything else. Okay, so I guess what I could do is maybe put together a little bit broader scene to kind of show you how to lay it all out. So let me kind of select all this and delete it. And let's put it in kind of like what if it was behind some other waves and stuff. So let me show you what it would look like with an expanded scene here real quick. And see, so I can throw this in just real quick here and kind of show you. So let me see here. Let me think about it for a second. Let me grab a different color. Alright, so let me see. Like I said, let me grab a different color. Maybe a mid-tone blue or something. Yeah, kind of like that. And All right, so like I said, what I'm thinking here is just kind of if you're wanting to kind of layer some of this, so just laying in something real quick. Um, and another thing you can do with the waves is just kind of this little comma or banana stroke that I'm doing kind of right here, back and forth. But again, I don't want to get overly detailed. I'm not trying to do a finished painting here. I just want to show you what the quick application would be, and then you could, again, the foundation, and then you can go in and play around with the look of it. So kind of a mid-tone blue, got a little bit darker blue to throw in front here. Now, anything darker is going to look closer to you than anything that is a lighter color. And again, just trying to play around with some of the shape and the look of it. Nothing too overly detailed. And if you want to make something look a little further back, you can make it a little bit purplish in color, and then put it in the background back here. And it'll kind of give it that look of distance. This is a little exaggerated for effect, but kind of gives you the idea of it. And then, just again, just start playing around with the highlights and thinking about, okay, if I've got a peak and I've got a swell, then if I go back and forth and leave a trough and leave an overlap, if I'm trying to go for a choppy sea or what. But again, thinking about like we were just doing a second ago, what am I trying to leave as far as a swell? What am I trying to leave as far as a trough? How would it overlap? Try to keep it random. We have a tendency in our mind's eye as a habit to create patterns. So it's really not uncommon as you do this stuff to find a pattern that you're going to start creating. So just kind of be aware of that and try and look for patterns to obliterate those. But go back and forth and see here I'm just kind of really quickly throwing in some stuff. I guess I don't need to go too fast, but I probably slow down a little bit. But I'm just trying to, again, give you an idea of the way you can kind of blend it all together to get that oceany kind of feel for the sea, for, if you wanted to put a boat on here or something like that, and have that kind of that look and feel of the ocean kind of going back and forth. But again, you can see the basics of what it looks like for, having the ocean just kind of, rolling and swelling and everything else. So again, trying to keep everything moving. And that's really what it comes down to. I mean, that's the difference between like a lake and the ocean, is that the ocean's constantly moving, whereas a lake is just kind of, can be sedentary, and, unless it's a really big lake or something. Just kind of keep thinking the ups and downs, But I want to kind of show you what this looks like here if you're thinking about it in layers, because this could easily be the background before I go back in and think about adding in, a breaker to start doing that big eye of a crashing wave. And what I'm doing here, one of the little tricks that I'm doing to just kind of tell you about is, you'll see how I kind of change between colors and all that. What I do is I just hit the Alt button and it picks up the color below it. So that way I don't have to keep going back to my color palette. And once I get a color that I like the way it's blended in, then I can do it. And then play around with the highlights. And here, again, you can kind of get lost in the foam patterns and stuff like that for playing around with it. That's kind of what I'm doing. I probably should stop, but it's practice. So, and that's really what I wanted this to be. I mean, I know most everybody, we all have a tendency to throw our best amazing stuff up on YouTube and try to knock everybody's socks off with the absolute. But this is kind of behind the scenes thing to show you what to think about when you're painting and what to practice. So it's kind of behind the scenes of, how do I go about creating these things. Sometimes I can sit down and crank out a landscape or a seascape in a couple hours. Other times, to be honest, it's just not working, and it can take me days. Heck, I've had some that I start, get frustrated with, set aside for a month, and then come back to it. It's one of the reasons I love ArtRage is that, if I don't like it, I can just save it. If I really don't like it, I can just undo it and then come back to it. So that's one of the reasons I really got into doing a little bit more digital artwork and stuff. But this is the stroke I'm talking about, just kind of this back and forth, kind of cutting in, like it's almost sideways banana, comma kind of stroke. But it's just kind of a lazy, hazy stroke for when you're doing it. And it'll just give you that flow. And really, the more random it is, and the more color you can have down, the more you can really play around with the depth that you'll get from it. But you got to be careful. You can start overworking it, which honestly I think is kind of what I'm starting to do here. So I probably shouldn't sit here and keep playing around with this, but I'm going to, just because. Because again, I need to practice, and I want you guys to see, what it's like as you sit here and just kind of, go behind the scenes of everything. But again, that back and forth, up and down. You can also start throwing in foam patterns if you want to get kind of a feel for, like, if I was doing foam here, and like if this was a really foamy here. Let me get some of this out of the way first. But if it was like a real foamy area, a lot of wind or a lot of debris underneath the water that was foaming it up, you can kind of get an idea for that and what that looks like. So, and one of the things in ArtRage that works fairly well for it is you got a couple different things. You got the custom brush, which I really like. It has a lot of really nice things on it that you can use. The artistic brush, and then the splatter brush. It give you a really nice feel. I like to play around with that one and play around with the chalk brush and using it to do it. But this, like, so say we have these waves and a wind starting to kick up and it's getting real choppy. Well, you're going to get a little spray from it here and there. So what does that look like? I do recommend, if you have capability to go to the ocean, take lots of pictures. You can look at stuff online. Be careful, don't steal anybody's stuff. Don't, just go copy their stuff. But you can play around with some different things. Take your own pictures. Definitely. I've seen people kind of play around with ideas as far as finding public domain images and splicing those together to get kind of an overall feel, and then from there they'll just make something up and draw it. So, kind of different things you play around with to get an idea. But one of the things too you can do is if there's somebody's work out there that you really like and you want to learn from it, copy it. Don't sell it and don't claim it to be your own, but copy it. See if you can reproduce it and practice from it. I mean, all the masters did that. They did it all the time. So there's nothing wrong with that. But go in and copy it and see if you can reproduce it and get a feel for it. It's one of the best ways to learn. So I'm going to try and lay in a little bit more foam here to kind of get a feel for it. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's a little choppy if it was wind blowing. So I'm starting to think about, okay, what if this was a good wind blowing in and got kind of a choppy look to it? What would it look like here or there? Would there be a different color to it? Maybe a little different reflection. Maybe pull some of the purple from the back down into it to add a little bit of foam. Oh, too much. Control Z. Yeah, so the chalk brush can work pretty good sometimes. And you can also go back in with the palette knife and kind of smear it out. show a little bit of what I'm talking about here. So I take the chalk brush and kind of play around with some of the flow and some of the foam. I can take the palette knife and kind of lay it down. Pencil works good too. A lot of times I'll just go back in with the oil brush. Because you can do dry brush. And the oil brush with these nice dabs and stuff. You get kind of a nice look. And then again, smear it out. One thing you can do with this too is while you're sitting here playing around with this stuff, do it on a different layer. So that way you can try it and not affect the stuff underneath it. So that way if you don't like it, you know, you didn't really mess with anything and smear it around too much. So this is the part where I probably should be doing this as a live broadcast. I don't know if we may be participating or not, but I wish I was live chatting with you guys right now to kind of go over and answer questions while I was doing this. You know, if that's something anybody would be interested in doing, you know, if I get enough people that would be interested in a time zone that would work out for all of us, I would love to do it. Just sit here and do a live painting and maybe answer some questions. You know, take a subject that you guys want to go over. Like, so I'm not the, you know, I'm good at stuff at what I do. You know, I'm sure there are people out there that are way better than me, but still, you know, I feel like I can teach somebody something. So I'd be more than happy to do kind of a class or something online. Maybe do a paint and sip. Well, give us a little something to sip on. It's your choice if it's alcoholic or not. But just, you know, kind of a paint and sip from our houses and sit here and paint and chat and talk. I think that would be awesome. Maybe a Google Hangout that way or something. If anybody be up for that, you know, leave a comment. See if we can't get something like that going. Maybe even do like a Facebook group or something. I think that'd be awesome. So, you know, so as you can see here, you know, I'm just playing around, guys. Hope you're getting a feel for it and what it kind of can look like and see. So, um, all right. Let me just throw in a little bit more stuff here, and I'll kind of show what I'm talking about with the palette knife and get kind of a feel for it. You know, the funny thing is, too, with foam, it's one of those things you lay down on it. You still have to think about the direction of the waves and the swells and everything else. But foam is one of those things that can look like you're messing it up till you start kind of blending it in. And then you're like, oh, that works. So, um, let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here. Kind of soften it back and forth with the palette knife and everything else. Like so. Alright, so just kind of soften all that around. Maybe cut some of this back a little bit. But you know, the funny thing is that the more the wind blows it around and the more you start having um, stuff being blown up and choppy waves, the more you're going to end up having foam on the water and get all that kind of really kind of interesting look to it, where it's just kind of drifting through it. But anyway, so let me let's kind of move on to something else here in just a second. So let's see. So kind of still going back to the anatomy of the wave and thinking about what it looks like from the side and stuff, you know, kind of how it's structured. Let's kind of move on from there. So let me show you. Let me grab a drink here. All right, so let me clear all this out. Okay, so again, thinking waves, let's kind of think of a cross cut of a wave again. Let me grab the pen tool and a darker color. And okay, so let me draw a little diagram here. So you have your swell, and kind of coming down to the trough, and your swell, and it's going to come over and kind of start forming a breaker, which would be where your eye and all that is. And this is just real rough. I'm not trying to go for anything super fancy here. I just want you to kind of see the diagram. So that would come there. And then you got to think about how the ocean floor would be. Maybe coming down through here. This looks really weird. Kind of like so. So let me diagram this real quick here. Let's see. So got the orbit kind of coming around this way. And this would be orbiting the same way. So even though it's out here, it would still be orbiting around like this. Okay. And which means that the orbit is still here. So the waves are flowing like this. And you've got the let's see, I could write it here. I guess I really could just, it'd probably be easier if I just type it out, I guess. Let me do that. So this is the ocean floor. And so I'll get that there. And then you've got your break right here, your breaker here. And your trough. And let's see, your swell. Okay. So if you think about this, the way what's happening is you get the same wave movement coming in. Well, what happens is as it hits the ocean floor, it's starting to compress, and it's going to push the wave up, and then it's going to cause it to start to fold up and over on itself to make the breaker. So it's flowing in left to right, coming up and pushing up. And then as it pushes up from all that force is what causes it to rise up and make the wave come up into the breaker. And that's what causes it to fold up on itself. So again, this is where you would have the trough in the distance, a swell, then another swell, and that's kind of what makes that background of it as it goes through and then forms the breaker curling up on itself. So you can kind of see how that orbiting motion is what causes that curl to form. And again, it's like a big cylinder that going the length of the beach that causes that to happen as they're just kind of pushing up over itself. And also as the wave kind of flows back down from the beach, it'll curl up on itself again. And so that's where that motion and everything comes from for all that. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense. But here, let me kind of clear it out a little bit, kind of explain some other stuff. All right, so let's see. So that kind of explains how that part works. So think about, I guess, a couple other things real quick. Here, let me grab water real quick. All right, grab a little bit of color. Okay, so let's think about a breaker. This is going to be really rough. So let's say you have the side of a wave, and it's starting to come up, and then you know how it'll go from like a darker color to a lighter color, and as it comes back over, it will usually start to go to a little bit darker color. Well, actually there'd be a light source right about here, the eye of the wave. Let's see, so put that right there. And then it would go a little bit darker. And then you're going to have some foam on the breaker where it starts to foam over. Kind of right like so. So this is very crude, I know, and it's meant to be. But I just really wanted to kind of show you the side here. So it's kind of neat. It's kind of a neat abstraction here. I'll play around with it for a second. Like a radioactive monster claw or something. So anyway, so again, the bright spot would be here. And so think about this, if you were painting this from the front to make it look right, this is pretty much the same colors you would use. You want to grab like a green and go from blue to a green to a yellowish color to maybe a little bit of white in here. You kind of smear it around. What if this is smear? Let me try. Probably not. So if this was forming up through here like so, kind of like this. Okay. So again, the wave would be cycling up through here, coming down. Kind of the pattern like so. And then you're going to have, like, say if the sun was up here, and you have your sun shining from up here, that's what's going to give you that thin, where that thin spot of the wave is, where it starts to thin out. That's what's going to give you that eye right there. Make it that bright spot that everybody always loves. So again, the wave coming up from behind, just kind of flowing up through that, that orbit. As it hits the ocean floor, compresses it up, and the water flows back, and pushes it, so it really just kind of pushes it back up and makes it cycle back over on itself. It gives you that look. So these are the things you got to consider when you're starting to sit here and paint a breaker and so forth. Okay. Hopefully that's making sense. All right, so let's apply some of this. I'm going to kind of speed up here. So the eye is created with the thinning of the water and the light source able to shine through it. Kind of gives you an idea of how it works. So how do we apply all this? Let me back some of this out, delete it out. Oops. All right. So let's kind of put some of this together into a real quick painting here. So let's see, grab the chalk brush, throw in a little bit of sky, just real quick, like so. And let me grab the a darker color here. Just in the background, I want to separate it really well. So figure right about here for everything. That'll be my horizon line. And let's see, I'll probably do the breaker right around in here. Kind of like the opening thing that I did. So there. So again, thinking about where's my peaks, where's my troughs, where's my swells. So just kind of start roughing that in, paying attention to what direction everything is going in. And start laying it out, taking a look at all these, start roughing it out. So I'm going to start laying in some color here, just kind of bouncing around. I usually go with blues and greens, different variations thereof. Alright, so if my light was coming down, I want it to show a little bit here, so we have some coming down through the trough. Still thinking about that elongated sideways banana. Alright, let's just keep pushing all this in here and getting a good feel for it. Kind of pulling out some of that green, a little bit of more troughs, and again, just trying to play around with thinking about the anatomy and the flow. And that back and forth kind of look. And I'm trying really not to overthink this. I don't want to sit here and turn this into a full-blown painting. It's just really kind of a rough sketch to show you what I'm talking about. I'm trying to put how to put all this together. So just go through here, just throw some of this in here, like so, and a little bit of blue over here, some highlights. Okay, again, just going back and forth, playing around with the peaks and the valleys and the peaks and the valleys. And then start pulling some down here. That's the other thing too. When you're painting a painting, make sure you're moving around the painting. You see how I'm taking some of the blue from the back, put it in the front, some of the green from the back, put it in the front, from the front to the back. And that's what gives you the harmony throughout your painting. It's what pulls it all together, is that you don't have one color in one specific spot. You have a little bit of it here, a little bit of it there, and it's all around. So that's what I'm trying to do here. A little bit different, kind of bluish green. Alright, a little bit lighter here. Alright. Oops, kind of burned that out a little bit. Pushed a little too hard there with my stylus. That's okay though, I can blend it back in. Again, that's where you gotta be careful. Some people ask me, they say, what stylus do I use? I'm using a Genius Net I'm using a Genius from geniusnet.com. Looks pretty good. Yeah, it's not bad. It's got takes a AAA battery and the pen and the stylus. Works pretty good. I actually got two of them because my kids lost my pen for a while, and I ended up having to order another one just to get the pen. It's not bad. It's a good thing. There's been a few more that have come out here recently that are a little bit better, so I may be getting a different one soon. I'd like to. If anybody has anything they want me to try out, feel free to send me one. I'll do a review. But so yeah, just kind of putting this on here. And let's see, alright. So separate the dark from the light. Now, in order for a light to show and the dark to show, you got to make sure that they are separated from each other like this. So you got to make sure they play off of one another, because If you have a light next to a light, it won't look that light. If you have a dark next to it, it's going to make it really pop. So we do that here, and kind of again keep pushing and pulling my colors and blending. Like I said, I'm really not trying to go for a finished painting here. I just want to show you kind of a quick sketch study kind of thing. I'm just making this up as I go anyway, so. Alright, so here, this. So. Okay. Alright, this part over here on the right side is where the breaker is going to be coming over, so that's why I haven't really focused much on it yet. I'm just trying to get an idea of the colors and back and forth of it. And kind of push some of these darks a little bit back here. Okay, so think about the wave coming over. Start doing that. And again, because I'm using the oil, I have a little bit of texture from the oil paint. So I can actually play around with the direction of the oil. Let me throw a little bit more highlights in here to kind of really start separating it out from the background. But I can play around with the direction of it because it has more of a painterly feel to it. So. And here's a thought too. I'm going to start putting this eye. Pay attention to one of the things I haven't talked about with the anatomy of a wave. You got to remember the light is coming through the wave. The wave is translucent. You can technically see both sides of the wave. If you look, you'll see stuff from the back side shining through to the front side. So you can play around. Excuse me. You can play around with seeing seaweed and stuff shining through it, but you don't have to have that stereotypical Bob Ross glow of the eye right here. It actually can be more interesting to kind of see it broken up, kind of like this. So kind of play around with this a little bit. I mean, I could just do that, that regular old glow, I guess. But hopefully this is kind of giving you an idea of stuff. I'm trying to. I've forgotten. It's a lot easier to do this when I've got somebody sitting here with me and I can show them. So I'm trying to think of you sitting here with me while I'm telling you this, but at the same time, it's kind of hard to paint and talk, and I feel like I've been going on for a while. I mean, we are getting on to 50 minutes here, so hopefully I'm keeping some of you with me and you're finding this useful. And again, this is the first longer one I've done, so leave questions, please. It's only going to make it better for me to know what exactly you want to hear and see. And I'm planning to do another lesson like this. It'll go a little bit more into some of the next parts of an ocean scene or a seascape. So for a couple of reasons. One is, a lot of people ask me. Another is I love painting these things. And another one is I can use the practice. So we can always use practice. So I just want to keep doing them. So please tell me if you're getting something from this. If there's something in particular that you want me to cover, I can try and work it in. If there's, if it's totally pointless to do it, then hey, let me know that too. But hopefully, like I said, you're getting something out of it. I enjoy doing it. It's fun. It's something it gives me a chance to practice. Okay, let's see. I probably need to put a little bit more. Yeah, let me grab different I'm using right now, I guess I should have said it, I realized I didn't say it. I'm using the pen tool to try and give a little more definition to some of the stuff in the background here. No, I don't like that. Let me soften it. There we go. So I'm going to start putting some of the foam in. And I always want to start with a darker color, so that way I can go in and put my highlights. And this is the custom brush that I'm using now. It's going to pick up some of the paint underneath it and really kind of pull them together, give that kind of look. So let me go across here some. And the funny thing is with this, probably should do this, but with this custom brush, sometimes looks better if I make a really big brush and then just use a lighter pressure versus trying to use a smaller brush. Maybe I should try that here in a second, see what it looks like, if it does better. Let me play a little bit lighter color first, see what I think. It's not too bad, it's still kind of artificial looking. Put a little highlights on the top here on the breaker. Just trying to pull this all together and make it pop a little bit so you can get a little bit better feel for it. I only want to spend about another 6-7 minutes on this. Try and pull some more of it together here. This is where I would go in and put more foam and more highlights normally. So you can get really detailed here with the foam crawling itself back up the wave as the breaker curls over. And the same thing for the highlights on the outside of the curl. But right through here, we can put a few highlights. But yeah, you can really just get lost in the details right here. Let me see. A few more highlights back here to kind of pull that together. Okay, in there. Okay. Smear this down. I'll give this a little bit more to sit on. Change color here. I'm really starting to get lost in the detail here, guys. I'm sorry. I probably shouldn't. I'm just thinking maybe I can add a few more veins of color and foam pattern. Yeah, let me put a little bit of, show you what I'm talking about, where you can see it from the other side here. So I just had some stuff going the other direction. It kind of gives you a better idea. Yeah, it's not too bad. Let's see. dramatic. Look at this. I should probably start wrapping this up, because actually, at the time of recording this, it's almost midnight my time, and I've had a really long day. So I'll tell you what, let me start trying to wrap this up for you guys, and then do a little summation here at the end. Okay, so I'm going to jump over here and put a little bit more foam. A little bit here. I could go ahead and add some splashes here, but you know, I think like so. Chalk brush looks pretty good for adding the foam in. I'm going to smear it back a little bit. I'll show you a little bit what I was talking about earlier. So for ArtRage, you can take the chalk brush and lay it in like so, just random patterns. And then go back and just kind of smear it in, and it'll make it look like the foam is creeping up the edge of the wave. Like so. I just want to show you guys a little bit of what this looks like when you put in some of these details. But again, if you want to remember the anatomy of it, what it looks like. Like so. And there. Foam is a really great way to add movement to a wave. It's a really great way to add some dynamic qualities. I'll probably cover that in the next one, talking about some of the atmosphere and ways to play around with tricks and stuff like that. That'll give it kind of a neat look. Let me see here. I'm going to change over to the palette knife. Soften some of this a little bit. Push it back a little more. Alright, custom brush, artistic, splatter. Let's go for a bigger brush, really kind of pop this a little bit. There we go. So that's going to really give us a splash kind of thing. A little bit of dynamic. What do you think? Like I said, I wanted to go ahead and kind of wrap this up a little bit, so that'll give us the pop that we're looking for. Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad at all. So not bad for a little study, right? Kind of gives some dynamic motion, kind of a feel. So, so hopefully you can see some of the different stuff that we've got here. We've got the foam, we've got the idea of the swells and the highlights and the troughs and the orbiting flow and everything else. So I just kind of push this back. All right, so that kind of gives you an idea, right? So probably should go over, talk about some of the different things to think about. Whoops, I meant to try to delete all that. There we go. All right, so a couple things to remember. Okay, so number one, for some points to remember. I'm going to type these out real quick. So number one, how do I want to say this? Sorry guys, my brain's dying. Alright, so waves are made up of swells and peaks and troughs. So that's something to always keep in mind when you're laying it out, be it from the front or the side. Let's see, then as they'll build up. So they're going to build up and fold over on themselves as they get closer into land. As they approach the shore, it's going to get thinner. It'll fold up on itself. The other part is that as you're painting breakers, you want to remember that the eye becomes translucent. As it bends. As it thins, and I just realized I typed that wrong. As it thins from stretching up over to become the breaker. And the final point is to remember is have fun. Enjoy doing this. I mean, enjoy the practice. Enjoy taking what you're learning and apply it. And make sure that you get something out of this. So, again, I hope you've gotten something from this. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that you'll, share it with others. If there are any questions or comments or suggestions or anything that you have, I'm trying to type this up on here so you can see the ArtRage just messed up on me here. Let me do this like this. So now it's trying to center everything. I figured to go through the whole video of here. We've been doing this for over an hour now, and now it's trying to mess up on me. So it's just me, guys. I guess I'm sorry. My brain's getting tired. So anyway, like I said, I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave any comments, questions. Click like. Give a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you haven't. Share it with your friends. Tell others. Let me know if you want me to keep doing these. Hope you've gotten something out of it. I hope the microphone has worked this time. I know that was an issue with one of my previous ones. Come visit me on Facebook, facebook.com/the You can visit me on my website, tnartist.me, and you can find everything from there as well. So, but yeah, I had fun doing this tonight. So, like I said, I'm starting to get a little brain dead here at the end because it's just been a long day. But I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope that you've got something out of it. And I would really love to hear anything back from you that I can to try and make this better, because I do enjoy doing this. I do enjoy teaching. And I'm just really kind of getting started with it. So as far as like trying to put together a full lesson. So please let me know any feedback you have. Because I want to do this for everybody out there that's wanting to learn how to do this. If you don't have a copy of ArtRage, highly recommend it. I don't get anything from them for telling you that. I've just used both Photoshop and ArtRage, so I recommend ArtRage because it just has a real good feel to it. So, but check it out. Let me know what you think, and I appreciate it, guys. Have a great rest of the day, night, morning, whatever it is, wherever you're at.